Okay, Stuart from JTS again, and look, actually we're doing our first video clip today from the new store in Cunda Park. So if you're in the area, come up and check us out. New store, all set up, ready to go. We're going to do a winch service here today. Now, a lot of people might be aware, but we do a fair bit of winch servicing at JTS. And now that the Cape season and people are starting to move around a little bit in the winter months, a lot of guys are going to be relying on their equipment. So today we're going to run through the basics on winch servicing and what we do. Yes, we do the full winch service. So what we're going to do is start on the electrical side of the winch. So firstly, we check for corrosion on all our contact points. These do get water and moisture and mud under them, under the boots, and they do corrode, which can obviously affect the performance of the electric motor. Making sure the drain hole in the bottom of this one is clear and can get rid of any moisture that might get in there. Also, we'll be checking the control box. This winch luckily is operational, so we know it's going to be fairly good in there. What we will be checking is the cable for problems, so kinks, squashed sections or broken line. So that will be something that we'll check when we retension this winch and put it back onto the drum a lot nicer than it is. And we'll also be pulling apart the gearbox. So that'll be a full strip down from the end plate back, wash, grease and reassemble. This one free spills, as you can see, nice and clear, so we're confident that'll be good in there. Okay, another thing to remember also before you remove the winch from the vehicle, which is a very handy thing, is to mark where everything lines up. So as you can see, this gearbox has been rotated. That's what needs to go back into the car so the operation of the handle isn't affected. Same with the motor. Obviously the wiring has remained in the vehicle, so we want it to go back in exactly the way it came out in the same format. So we'll pull this gearbox apart now and have a quick look and see how she is inside. The nice thing about worn winches are they are all serviceable external, so you don't have to remove the drum support to get into the motor or gearbox. I can already feel a little bit of moisture on these bolts as I remove them, so it indicates to me that this has had water in here. We've had a lot of rain around the area lately, so it could have picked up a bit. Okay, last bolt out of the motor, so she's ready to come off. Take the end off. If you're careful, you won't damage the gaskets, which is obviously something we're trying to achieve here. And you can see that gasket's still in nice control. So there's your, basically, as you can see, this winch is in good condition as we spoke about. This is a service basically being done to make sure that the item's going to work 100% how it's supposed to when it needs to be used. As you can see, that has been greased and serviced at some point, and you can see the handle which slides this in and out, which is engages and disengages the winch. I normally like to lay the stuff out as it comes off, so there's no confusion then of how it all needs to go back together. Again, it's been nice and clean. A little bit of moisture and dirt starting to get around that, as you can see in the different colour of it. Again, being careful of the gasket. Removing the second section, which is the gear cluster for the winch. Again, being careful not to destroy these gaskets. And as you can see, nice and greased all the way through. So we're just going to throw a little bit more grease in there. Obviously it's all operational, which is good, and put it all back together. Again, just to check and make sure the thing's going to be good for him when he gets up the Cape. Okay, so reassembly is just basically a reverse of what we've just pulled apart. Now I'll put it back together. This has obviously all been checked, and we'll put a bit of grease on reassembly. So follow me through the next couple of steps, and it's like I said, reverse to the other way. We usually use an LMM grease, or you can use a marine-based grease to stop entry and just to give it all a bit of a freshen up. Now, another thing also to remember, it's the same with your CVs on your car. The more grease you get in there, the less chance of other contaminants getting in there, hence mud, water, dirt, foreign objects as such. Now, you don't want to put too much grease, or otherwise the whole system will hydraulic on you, but the more grease that you can get in there, the better off it's going to be in the long run for it. So like I said before, this is just a reassembly, the reverse of what we've just done. A little bit of patience just to line everything up. Nothing needs to be forced, it all should fit back together as it came apart. And as you can see, that just slides on there now. This is a pretty messy job. I usually put a little bit of grease on the gaskets too, just makes them seal up a little bit nicer. Holds them in place too while you're trying to line everything up. Cleaning, greasing, checking, and it's all done on an individual basis. Obviously, we get winches that come in that don't work at all, right through to just maintenance servicing, which this one is as well. So let's get my locating mark. And I set the winches up like this because I find them a lot easier to assemble. Sometimes they go on first go. Sometimes they can be a bit of a challenge. So far so good on this one. So that, as you can see, my mark's lining up beautifully. Gaskets aren't distorted. They're sitting nice and flat on the winch. And that sits down nice and neat and on home on that. Okay, next gear set on. Again, central shaft of the winch, again, just letting all that mesh up nice, and it should just fall into place like that. Okay, the last one to go on, and these are all the gears that turn the winch. It's a reduction scenario. Just letting that slip into that, locate itself over that central drive shaft, and it should just fall in nice and neat. There's a little gear there we'll stick on at the end. Just trying to mesh him up now. Just trying to mesh. There we go. Nice. Okay, so as you can see, nice and turned. Plenty of grease in there. Light, it gets turned backwards and forwards. That's your disengage on the gearbox. So if that doesn't turn freely, generally it means take the screw out of here, get the handle out and clean him behind there, and then you can get them operating nice and smooth. I like the Warn product because it actually has a lever. So when your hands are greasy or muddy, when you are working out in the field with your winch, something decent to grip onto, opposed to a little switch or dial, which can get quite hard inside a bar too as well. So this is a good setup. So I'll put this back on. Again, lining up the marks so it fits back into the car. This has been rotated to suit the bar, so we've got to make sure that goes back that way. So basically, yeah, we just have to line that up a little bit more, just get him to line up, run our bolts in it, and that's basically the reassembly done. Okay, as part of the service also, we generally try to get this motor off and have a little look inside there. So basically the main thing that can let these down is you obviously get moisture gets in here, and they do bond on the armatures, hence that click, click, click that you hear a lot of winches that come in. So usually it's motor based problem there. Another problem that we do have with these is these have a rubber boot that goes over these contacts, the motors, poles, and those poles can fill up with moisture, mud, dirt, and then corrode this out. On other brands of winches, that can be a real issue. It's an issue for all electric winches, but not as bad. It doesn't seem to affect these guys as bad. So what we generally do is just smear a bit of grease around those. You can put a bit of contact, blue battery terminal contact stuff on there if you wanted, but try to keep those nice and clean, because that is the contact power supply for your motor. So you want that to be clean, and obviously the same good solid earth on the outside. So we'll take this apart now and have a quick look in here, and we'll see what's in here. This one has a drain hole, as you can see. I have marked again the orientation of this motor, so it goes back in the same, but there's a drain hole. So we'll make sure that's clear all the way through. That is where the water gets out of your motor. It's very important if you do start rotating motors on winches that this does remain at the bottom. I have seen them come in where they're at the top like that. So water can get in, but can't get out. And that will eventually give a tidal mark through the motor, and that will eventually be the demise of the motor once that set's solid. This is the main body of the motor. It's got armature pads on there that turn the motor. In the end here, this is the brush cap, also the brushes for the motor are in the end here. What we're going to do though is we're going to endeavour to try to get this off this motor. Generally with the Warn, the rotation, there's only 4 places of rotation. Little dowels locate the motor. These bolts go right back into this end plate here on the Warn. Again, another easy good thing about the Warns is they're serviceable external of removing the drum, or those spreader bars I should say. So what we're going to try to do is just wiggle this off and have a little look in here. Again, trying not to ruin the gasket too much. Looks like I might have got that gasket off nicely. So there, as you can see, inside that, she has had moisture in her at some point. There's a lot of rust and debris coming out of that. You can see coming out of that motor. So we'll clean this up before we put it back on. But I just thought I'd show that for this clip, what they can look like inside. And this isn't a bad one. We have seen them a lot worse. They normally leave a pool of muddy water. That's a telltale sign that it's done a lot of water work. Okay, so I've just put a little bit of a smear of silicone around the motor section there. Obviously, like we spoke about before, we're leaving the drain hole at the bottom of the motor free, but the other two at the top we've actually filled up with silicone, and a small bead just around there just to give us a little bit of a seal. Again, lining up everything. Now hopefully I can get this in with lining up. There's a gear on the other side of this drum support, so hopefully I can pick that up without having to take it off. It's going to be cheating a little bit. Looks like I might have done it. Let's hope we've got it there. Looks like I've got it there. So that's great. As opposed to having to take off this drum support, there's a gear that sits on the back of that which turns the motor through that centre shaft. But I've been able to line that up, which has saved me a little bit of time. But as you can see, nice seal, silicone seal all the way around. No gasket there, so we just run a bit of silicone on that. And also, like I said, that drain hole's nice and clear. Okay, well that wraps up the service of this winch. And as you saw, this winch is in really good condition, but it is going to give the customer peace of mind when he goes away that it's going to work when he needs it. As far as maintenance on a winch, well, there's not a hell of a lot you can do. Obviously the cable is probably where most of your maintenance needs to go. We're going to obviously re-spool this one on before the customer receives the car back. But if you have a synthetic rope, you have to be conscious of them as well. So you've got to keep them clean and keep them dry. So a little bit more work there. All winches, electric winches, we basically tell customers, get a couple of metres out periodically, in and out, keep the armature packs on this motor nice and clean. Other than that, that's about it. If you are taking into extreme areas or you're going to do a lot of water work, make sure at some point that you get the winch sorted and serviced before you rely on it again. Other than that, I've got the unenviable task of putting this back into the car now. It's a heavy, big winch, this one. So we're going to do that and get it back to the customer, and hopefully you'll have a good holiday.
Make sure you come and check us out. We're at 7 Charles Court, just off Maroochydore Road, right beside the Bunnings Trade Centre. You can't miss us.